It came in the mail on a Tuesday. I remember because I had just come back from the post office, a silly errand that cost me $12.47 just to mail a birthday gift to my niece in Oregon. And the irony wasn't lost on me when I saw that familiar handwriting on a cream envelope sitting in my mailbox. Emily, my soon-to-be daughter-in-law, though she never once called me Mom. Not even by accident. Always Mrs. Halberd, or worse, just nothing. She'd look at me, blink twice like she was deciding whether I was worth speaking to, and then turn to my son Josh to finish her sentence, like I wasn't even there. Still, when I saw the envelope, I smiled. It was about time. They'd been engaged for 8 months already. I had bought a navy blue dress 3 weeks prior, $109 from Nordstrom Rack, marked down from $260, and it still hung in my closet with the tags. I even kept the receipt, just in case. But this envelope, was the confirmation I'd been waiting for. I brought it inside with the rest of the mail, water bill, grocery store coupons, a suspicious postcard that said I might have unclaimed inheritance in Arizona, and then Emily's envelope. No return address, just my name. Mrs. Mary Ann Halberd, written in her neat designer handwriting, all loops and tiny letters. She probably used one of those gold pens that write like wet paint. Typical Emily, always trying to make everything look like a curated Instagram post. I sat down with my cup of instant coffee, still hot, and carefully opened it. Inside was a single piece of heavy cardstock. No colors, no florals, no names, no dates, no time or place. Just blank. Completely, unforgivably blank. At first, I thought maybe the ink had rubbed off. I held it to the light, turned it sideways, rubbed my thumb across it. Nothing. Not a smudge, not a drop. Then I laughed, a brittle, humorless sound that startled even me, and whispered aloud, "This must be a mistake." I texted Josh. "Me. Got an invite in the mail. Looks like something went wrong with printing." No reply. I waited 20 minutes. An hour. 3. Nothing. By 8:41 p.m., I called him. Straight to voicemail. By the time I went to bed, I had convinced myself that it was some kind of misprint, a silly error from the wedding planner, or a batch of faulty ink. Maybe the printer ran out just as mine was being made. That happens, right? I didn't sleep. I kept waking up thinking maybe I'd find a new envelope slipped under the door with a real invitation. I even checked the porch light twice. Nothing. The next morning, I drove to their apartment. It was about 22 minutes away, in one of those new complexes that smells like drywall and frozen smoothie bowls. They'd moved there last year. I helped them put up their curtains, pale pink with golden loops, the ones Emily insisted matched her aesthetic. I'd paid for them too. $94.99 from Anthropology. When I knocked, it was Josh who opened the door. He looked tired, like he hadn't slept either. "Hey, Mom," he said. His voice was tight. "Is Emily home?" He hesitated. "She's in the shower." I reached into my purse and pulled out the invitation. "I got this in the mail. Was there a mistake? Because it's completely blank, Josh." He looked at it, then looked at me, and I swear to God, he winced, like my presence, my existence, physically hurt him. Then he said the sentence I'll never forget. "Mom, that wasn't a mistake. The world didn't stop spinning, but something inside me did." I blinked. "What do you mean?" Josh sighed. "Emily didn't want to invite you." The words hit me like cold soup dumped on my head. "She said," he continued, his voice barely above a whisper, "you'd make things uncomfortable. She thought sending you a blank one was gentler." "Gentler?" My voice cracked. "Then what? Telling me outright I'm not welcome?" He didn't respond, just stood there, like a boy again, caught in a lie. I looked past him, into their pristine, white apartment. I saw my baking dish on the counter, the one I used to make my signature lasagna, the one they asked me to bring to Christmas 2 years ago. I saw the tiny decorative ladder I gave them as a housewarming gift, and behind that, the shadow of Emily stepping out of the hallway, wrapped in a towel, avoiding eye contact. "I see," I said. I turned and left. I didn't cry in the car. Not at first. I sat in the parking lot, hands on the wheel, watching the world pass by like nothing had happened, like I hadn't just been deliberately erased from one of the most important days of my son's life. I had raised that boy through bronchitis, bullying, breakups. I had sat outside in the cold for every soccer game. I had worked overtime shifts at the hospital to make sure he never had to choose between tuition and groceries. And this is how I find out I'm not invited? A blank card? That evening, I opened a notebook I hadn't touched in years. Not the one where I track my medications, not the one with family recipes. No, my red leather notebook, the one I used to use when I needed to think or plan. I flipped to a clean page and wrote the date at the top, September 12th, 2025. Then I wrote a single word: observe. I wasn't going to yell or beg or threaten. That would be too easy for them to twist. No, I would watch. I would remember everything. How much money I had given them, how many hours I had invested, how they spoke to me, how they looked away when the truth got too loud. And when the moment came, because it always does, I would be ready. It was 9:18 p.m. when he knocked on my door. I was sitting in the living room, staring at the navy blue dress still hanging from the arch of my closet, tags fluttering like they knew something I didn't. I had just written in my notebook again, a new entry under Observe, March 5th, 2023, $400 gifted for wedding planning expenses, no receipt, no thank you, and then they kept the lasagna dish. So when I heard the knock, I didn't get up right away. I waited. Another knock, louder, then a pause, and then I heard his voice. "Mom, can I come in?" It was the same voice I used to hear through the door when he scraped his knee or lost his phone. But now it had something new in it, a tremble, or maybe a thread of desperation. I opened the door, slowly. There he was, my son, my only child. Hair still damp from a shower, hoodie half-zipped, eyes puffy like he'd been crying or drinking or both. "I shouldn't be here," he said immediately. "No," I replied, stepping aside. "But since you are, come in." He sat on the edge of the couch like it might bite him. I sat across, deliberately upright. The silence between us was thick, like the insulation in the attic or the dough of a pie left too long to rest. "We're getting married tomorrow," he said, not meeting my eyes. "I gathered that," I said. "What do you want, Josh?" He rubbed the back of his neck. "Emily's necklace broke. The one her grandma left her. The clasp snapped. She wants to wear it. And you're the only person I know who could fix something like that." I stared at him. "You came here the night before your wedding," I said slowly. "Not to apologize, not to explain, not even to invite me, but to ask me to fix something for her." His face flushed. "It's important to her. I'm sure it is, and I knew you'd understand." Something in me cracked at that assumption that I would always understand, that I'd just nod and swallow and quietly serve, like I had my whole life. I stood up and walked to the cabinet. Inside, I kept my small jewelry tools, the ones I used to use when I'd help friends repair heirlooms or tighten clasps for elderly patients at the clinic. I took out the velvet pouch and laid it on the table in front of him. "Leave the necklace here," I said. "I'll fix it. You can pick it up in the morning." You're not coming?" I looked at him. Was I ever invited? He didn't answer. That was answer enough. After he left, I went to the bedroom. I opened the closet and took down the navy blue dress. I laid it on the bed. Then I opened my bank app. I started scrolling back. January 14th, $1,200. Josh rent shortfall. February 2nd, $250. Emily's bridesmaid brunch. February 18th, $400. Florist deposit. Total, $1,850. That didn't even include the $3,000 I had transferred last August when they said they were drowning in student loans. And yet, not a seat. Not a folded place card with my name. Not even a chair near the kitchen exit. Just a blank card. And now, a necklace to fix. I stayed up that night working on the clasp. It wasn't difficult. Just a fine silver chain and a cheap hook, nothing like real craftsmanship. I replaced it entirely with a sturdier one from my own kit, something that would last. Then I added a little detail they'd never notice, a tiny engraving on the back of the clasp. MH. Not for Emily, for me. because I was there, because I touched it, because they would never admit it, but I was part of that wedding, whether they liked it or not. At 7:15 a.m. the next morning, Josh came to pick it up. He looked like he hadn't slept. "Thanks," he said, eyes darting. "You really came through." "I always do," I said. "That's what mothers are for, isn't it?" He didn't reply, just took the necklace and left. I watched from the window as he got into his car. Emily was in the passenger seat. She didn't look up once. I didn't cry. I had cried enough. Instead, I made myself a small breakfast, toast, 2 boiled eggs, 1 cup of coffee, and sat at the table in silence. The dress was hung back in the closet. I didn't need it. At 9 a.m., I opened my laptop. I logged into my old Facebook account, the one I hadn't used in 2 years. I uploaded one photo, a snapshot of me and Josh from when he was 8 years old, taken at the county fair, cotton candy on our faces, his hand in mine. Caption: "Some people send invitations, others send messages." I got the message, loud and clear. I didn't tag them. I didn't have to. At 11:43 a.m., my phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize. "This is Emily's mother. We heard what happened. I'm so sorry." 2 minutes later, another buzz. "Josh. Mom, please delete that post. It's causing problems." I didn't reply. I turned off my phone, because suddenly I had an idea, one that would take time, planning, a certain kind of precision. The kind of revenge that doesn't yell or scream. It waits. It waits for the perfect moment, and I would be ready. They thought I'd stay silent, but I found something on their wedding registry that didn't belong, and it opened the first door to everything they tried to keep hidden. They didn't list me under family. Not in the online album they posted later that night, not in the speeches Emily's father gave, not in the tags, the hashtags, or even the blurry group photos where my son stood grinning like a boy who had been told not to look back. But I was there, not at the venue. No, I wasn't welcome in their Pinterest-perfect ceremony with pale pink florals and bone-white chairs, but I was present in other ways, in the necklace around Emily's neck, in the dishes they used to serve their signature family-style brunch, in the wine glasses I had sent them last year for their engagement, and soon in something far more inconvenient. It started with a petty impulse, I'll admit that. At 3:07 a.m., unable to sleep again, I went online and pulled up their wedding registry. I wanted to see what they had asked for, see which friends of mine had been invited and contributed, names I'd recognize, people who, perhaps, hadn't realized I'd been excluded, or worse, people who had. There it was, Williams-Kemper Registry. Header image, a pastel photo of them holding hands on a beach. "Welcome to our love story," it read in looping font. I nearly gagged. Then I began scrolling. The usual junk, a $300 Dyson blender, handmade linen napkins from Portugal, $145 for 4, a couple's yoga at sunset gift card, $120, one of those obnoxiously expensive Dutch ovens in blush pink, $325, disgusting excess. But halfway down, something caught my eye, a line item that felt off. Heirloom Watch Repair Fund, $600 goal, 4 contributors. My stomach dropped. They had included a fund for fixing a watch, an heirloom watch, except there was only one heirloom watch in this family, and it used to belong to my late husband, Gregory. I remember the day Greg gave it to Josh, his 21st birthday. Greg was already sick by then, heart failing, his skin a shade too pale every morning, but he insisted on giving Josh the watch himself. "Every halberd man has worn it," he told him, "and now it's yours." Josh didn't even pretend to appreciate it. He barely looked up from his phone. Greg died 2 months later. The watch was supposed to be sacred, a reminder of legacy, of sacrifice. I'd had it cleaned and stored in its original leather case. Josh was supposed to keep it safe, but now here it was, being paraded on a public wish list as a donation link. I clicked the contributors button. One of the names hit me like a hammer. Carol S., my sister-in-law. She had given $150 to the fund, the same woman who told me she wasn't sure what side to take. The next day, I drove to the safety deposit box at Eastern Federal Bank. I had kept a second copy of Greg's will there. I wanted to check something. Clause 7b. The Omega Seamaster wristwatch shall be passed to our son, Joshua Halberd, with the stipulation it remain in family possession and not be sold, pawned, or transferred without consent of Mary Ann Halberd. I snapped a photo. My hands were steady. That watch was not theirs to sell or to raise money for, and now they'd left a digital trail. I didn't confront Josh immediately. That would be too easy, too obvious. Instead, I decided to make contact with someone they wouldn't expect, the watchmaker. I called Williams Company pretending to be a confused contributor. "Hi, I saw a repair fund for a family heirloom watch, and I just wanted to confirm the shop handling it. I'm thinking of buying the couple a similar service myself." The young woman on the line hesitated, then read the entry. "Oh yes, that one is being handled by Bastion's Jewelry on 6th Avenue. The bride's family requested it. I can give you the quote number if you're looking for the same service." Perfect. Bastion's Jewelry was a small, high-end watch repair store, the kind of place that doesn't advertise. You go there if your Rolex is sentimental or your grandfather's pocket watch needs surgery. I called them next, used my maiden name, told them I was the original owner of the Omega Seamaster they were repairing under quote number 4229. "Ah yes," the man said. "That piece was in rough shape. Had to replace the rotor. The woman who dropped it off said it was her husband's grandfather's. Quite a story." Emily. Lying again. I asked him for the pickup date and price. "Fully paid," he said. "By the groom's mother, I believe." "Excuse me?" That's what the man said. He said his mother gifted it as a surprise. I swallowed hard. "Did he give you a name?" "No, but He credit card was under Halberd. Sound familiar?" I hung up. So they were using my name now. My legacy, my husband's memory, to raise funds from strangers and family, and to claim that I had somehow gifted them the repairs. My jaw tightened. That was the moment I stopped recording numbers in my notebook and started a new section, reversals. And on the first line I wrote, "Watch repair reversal, $600. Contact Bastions with will clause ownership rights. File claim." Then I circled it. Twice. They thought I'd be grateful they kept the last name, but that name doesn't belong to Emily. It belongs to me. And Greg. And it deserves to be defended. Later that evening, I logged back into their registry. Another item had been marked as fulfilled, $1,000 honeymoon fund for peace and healing after a long wedding journey. I opened my calendar and scribbled a new note. Find out where they're going. Find out who paid. Because peace? That wouldn't come so easily. Not after what they'd taken. Not with what I was about to uncover next. They left a review on their honeymoon suite, and a photo slipped into the gallery. In the background, I saw something they didn't intend to share, and it blew everything open. There are things people forget in photographs, not the posed ones, not the fake laughing over coffee or the mid-spin twirls on cobblestone streets. I mean the real things, the reflections in windows, the corners of mirrors, the items on a nightstand that say far more than a caption ever could. That's how I caught them. But I'm getting ahead of myself. 2 days after the wedding, my friend Lorna called. We hadn't spoken since December, after she sent a Christmas card addressed to the Halberds, all three, and I nearly threw it in the fireplace. But this time her voice was cautious, curious. "Mary Ann, I saw Josh and Emily's honeymoon post. It's quite extravagant." "Where?" I asked too quickly. "Triplistia. They left a review on the suite, full name and all." Triplistia, of course. The travel app where every hotel, spa, and overpriced treehouse can be reviewed like a sandwich shop. Emily was addicted to it. She once reviewed a bathroom stall at the museum downtown because the lighting was influencer-friendly. So I downloaded the app, created a throwaway profile, and searched Halberd. There it was, Emily Josh H. Honeymoon. Stay at the Mira Vista, Big Sur. Bime stars. Gushing adjectives, something about soul restoration and oceanic intimacy. And then, the photos. The first one was typical. A balcony shot. Her in a white robe, him holding 2 glasses of champagne. In the distance, the sea. Second, their room. Scattered rose petals, a towel folded into a swan. Tasteless. Third, a selfie. Close-up, Emily smiling too wide. Josh behind her, shirtless. He always hated shirtless photos. But then, the 4th photo. That's where I stopped breathing. It was taken indoors, a mirror shot from the corner of their suite. She'd meant to capture the full view of the bed and window, I assume, but in the mirror, behind the couple, on the corner of the desk, was something she clearly didn't notice. A white binder, half open, with a name peeking out from the label sleeve. M. Halberd. Medical records. My records. My medical records. My hands started to tremble. Why the hell would they have my medical file with them on their honeymoon? I took a screenshot. Zoomed in. It wasn't just my name. I could make out the date on the file. August 2023. The week after I went in for that biopsy. The results had come back benign, praise God. But for a full month, my family thought I was dying. Emily barely acknowledged it. But Josh, he visited twice, asked if I had a plan in place. He meant my will. Now I was starting to understand why. I didn't panic, not immediately. Instead, I logged into my MyHealthLink portal and checked the download history, a security feature I had activated years ago after a break-in at the clinic. And there it was. Download logged. August 28, 2023, 2:46 p.m. IP address traced back to Josh's old laptop. They had accessed my records, not to help, not out of concern, but because they were planning something. Maybe they thought I was dying. Maybe they hoped it. That would explain why Emily had been so smug during those months, why she whispered behind closed doors, why the registry had included legacy items, family heirlooms, and vague tributes to the past. They were positioning themselves. I printed the photo, the one with the binder in the mirror. Then I made 2 copies of my will. Marked draft, not executed, in red pen across the top. I placed one on my kitchen table, the other in the mailbox. Not mailed, just there. Let them wonder if I had changed it. Let them start to sweat, because now I had evidence, and they had intent. That night, I wrote again in my red notebook, under the new section titled Exposure. Septi 18, found medical binder in honeymoon photo. Cross-check IP address, done. Confirm file accessed without consent. Research HIPAA violations, unauthorized access. Consider strategic leak. Then below it, a question. What were they hoping to find? And an answer. That I was close to death. But I wasn't. Not even close. The next morning, I called my lawyer, Elaine. We hadn't spoken since Greg's estate was finalized. Elaine, hypothetical question, I said. Okay, shoot. If someone accesses your medical records without permission and uses that information to position themselves for inheritance, what laws apply? She went silent for a moment. Then, depends. Could be identity theft. Could be data privacy violation. If there's financial gain, fraud. What if it's your own son? Another silence. Still counts. That was all I needed. I wasn't going to the police. Not yet, because the best kind of revenge isn't legal. It's personal. It's quiet. It's watching their world spin, slowly, as they try to remember whether the camera was on, whether the email was deleted, whether they slipped. And it's knowing that yes, they did. They slipped. In the one place they thought I'd never see. But I always see. I always have. Emily's mother called to clear the air, but let something slip that proved this betrayal ran deeper than I ever imagined, and started long before the wedding. She called at 6:43 p.m., just as I was slicing into a roasted chicken breast I'd cooked for one. I let it ring twice. Her name flashed on the screen, Vivian Rothstein, Emily's mother. A woman who once brought a pre-packaged cheese plate to Thanksgiving and called it artisan. I answered without emotion. Vivian. Marianne, she said, her voice syrupy. I hope I'm not calling at a bad time. You are, but go on. She laughed lightly, like we were 2 schoolgirls gossiping and not 2 women on opposite ends of a war neither one of us had openly declared. I wanted to clear the air. I didn't respond. I heard through the grapevine that you were upset about the wedding, about the invitation mishap. Mishap. The word sat in my throat like a stone. It wasn't a mishap, I said. It was a message. Marianne, please don't be dramatic. I set down my fork. You sent me a blank card, and you didn't flinch when I didn't show up. That's not a mishap. That's coordination. She went quiet for a second, then sighed. Emily just... She didn't want tension. She's very sensitive to energy, you know, and after everything that happened with the will, I stopped breathing. What? She paused. Too long. Oh, I thought you knew. I stood up slowly. Knew what, Vivian? The thing with the health scare. And the will. I just assumed Josh told you he and Emily had talked to someone about your estate. My entire body flushed hot. When did they talk to someone? Back in July, I think. Emily was very concerned. She said you were being secretive about your diagnosis, that it wasn't fair to Josh to be left in the dark. I didn't have a diagnosis in July, I snapped. I didn't even get the biopsy until August. Silence. Vivian, I said, my voice shaking now. Are you telling me Emily was asking about my will before I was even tested? Another pause. She knew she had said too much. Perhaps I misremembered. No, I don't think you did. She tried to pivot. Look, the kids are under a lot of stress. Newlyweds, financial stuff. I just think we all need to take a deep breath and remember we're family. I laughed. Once. Are we? Then I hung up. I sat down and stared at the wall. July. They'd been circling me before the health scare even began. Before the tests, before the scan, before I even had reason to worry. They were waiting for a window, an excuse, something to wedge themselves into my legacy before the door closed. And Emily, sweet Emily, must have been planting stories with her own mother, probably wringing her hands, talking about mom's confusion or memory problems, laying the groundwork to make me look unstable, unfit, replaceable. I opened my notebook. Section, Motive, July, Emily. Josh discussed my will. August, accessed my medical files. September, excluded me from wedding, all while accepting money. Total to date, $6,250. Next page, I wrote, how do you replace someone who isn't dead? Then I underlined it twice. I needed proof that it started earlier. Not just the binder, not just the files. I needed to know when Emily began treating me like a dying asset instead of a mother-in-law. So I called an old contact, Trina, a receptionist at the law office where Greg and I did our estate planning. Hey, it's Marianne. Quick question. Has anyone asked about my file in the last few months? She paused, then lowered her voice. Actually, yes, back in July. A young woman called, said she was your health proxy and needed access for a secondary opinion. Name? Emily Rothstein, but she wasn't listed anywhere on your forms, so I didn't give her anything. My hand gripped the counter. Did she say why she needed the records? She said you were deteriorating and might not be lucid enough to update your directives. There it was. Not just curiosity. Premeditation. She wasn't just hoping I'd die. She was positioning herself in the wings, script in hand, waiting for her cue. And Josh? He either didn't see it, or he let it happen. Either way, the betrayal had roots. Later that night, I took out the navy blue dress, the one I never wore. I slit the side seam open with sewing scissors and inserted a small flash drive, one that now contained copies of every screenshot, every email, every document I had collected so far. Then I stitched it shut, because this story wasn't ending quietly. It was being preserved. And when it came time, when the mask finally slipped, and Emily showed the world who she was, I would be ready. With evidence, with dates, with receipts. I received a floral delivery with no card, but buried in the wrapping was something that didn't belong, a receipt that showed someone had used my identity, and it wasn't the first time. It was a Wednesday, cloudy, the kind of day when the sun can't decide if it wants to show up, and the air smells faintly of dust and wet cement. I was folding towels in the laundry room, white, always white, because color just gives them excuses to bleed, when the doorbell rang. It was 11:06 a.m., too early for company. I wiped my hands, tucked the last towel into the basket, and walked to the front door. There stood a delivery boy, couldn't have been older than 20, holding a tall white arrangement of lilies and white roses wrapped in tissue paper with a silver ribbon. He was chewing gum and looked like he hated his job. Delivery for Marianne Halberd? I didn't respond right away. He thrust the flowers at me. Sign here, please. I did. He left, I stood in the doorway for a full minute, staring down at the bouquet. Lilies. Greg used to bring me lilies every March, for our anniversary. Only he always included a handwritten card, folded carefully between the stems. These, no card, just the flowers. And an uneasy feeling in my stomach. I carried them to the kitchen and began unwrapping the tissue paper, slowly, carefully. That's when something slipped from between the folds. A receipt, folded in half, creased like it had been shoved into the packaging at the last second. I unfolded it with shaking fingers. It was from Flora Belle's, the most expensive flower shop in town. Custom orders, minimum spend of $75. But this one, $247.86. Date, September 20th. Recipient, Marianne Halberd. Billing contact, Emily Rothstein Halberd. Only the email address used wasn't mine, and it wasn't Emily's either. It was a Gmail address that looked like gibberish, something hastily made up. But the last 4 digits of the credit card, not mine. I recognized those numbers because they matched the card I'd once let Josh use to book a rental car during a family trip back in 2021. I'd closed that card a year ago, or so I thought. I opened my banking app, dug through old statements. That account was still technically open, a backup I hadn't used in 14 months. But there it was, September 20th, 10:12 a.m. Flora Belle's, $247.86. So they hadn't just bought flowers. They'd used my identity to send them to me, as if they were doing something kind, though, gateful. When in fact, they were just laundering guilt through my own bank account. I checked for a refund. Nothing. Checked for a chargeback. Nothing. They were hoping I wouldn't notice. Hoping I'd think, how sweet, and not look any deeper. I called the flower shop. Hi, this is Marianne Halberd. I received an order this morning. I believe it was charged to my account. The woman on the line sounded distracted. Oh yes, I remember. Big order. Pale lilies, right? Yes. Can you tell me who placed it? I'm not supposed to give out client names. I hesitated, then said quietly, it's fraud. I didn't authorize the charge, and I'm reporting it. A pause. Okay, well, the name on the order was Emily Halberd, but the email and card didn't match her past orders. Did she write a message? Nope. Just white, elegant, nothing fragrant. I hung up and sat at the kitchen table. The flowers were beautiful, clean, deceptively pure. But now I saw them for what they were, an eraser, a way to wipe the slate clean, make me feel included, loved, softened, without ever offering an apology. No admission. Just misdirection. And worse, they used my own money to do it. Back to the notebook. Section, Deceptions. Used old credit card to send anonymous floral apology. Charged to my account. No refund issued. Attempted emotional manipulation. Then I flipped the page and started a new list. Identity theft incidents. Timeline. July. Emily impersonates health proxy with law firm. August. Josh accesses my private medical records. September 20th. Flowers charged to my account using old card? What's next? That's the thing about liars. They don't stop at one trick. They test the waters. A fake email here, a forged note there, a small charge they think I'll overlook. But I was writing it all down. I decided to check the flower shop account. Still had access from a gift I'd ordered 3 years ago. I typed in my email, hit forgot password, reset it. Once inside, I clicked Order History. Nothing under my name. But then I searched Emily Halberd. There were 2 recent orders, both to Vivian Rothstein, delivered the same day I got mine. Only hers came with messages. Thank you for everything, Mom. We couldn't have done this without you. You've been our rock. We love you. She got words. I got a charge. I walked to the trash, lifted the flowers, and dropped them in, but not before pulling out a single petal. I pressed it into the back of the red notebook, taping it flat. A reminder that kindness without accountability is just control with prettier paper. That evening, I withdrew another $3,000 from my savings account, not for them, not anymore, but for what's coming. Because no one forges my name, empties my kindness, and buries it under fake petals. Not without watching it all come back to bloom in the most unexpected way. I logged into my old email to double-check the flower shop reset and found a string of password change requests. One of them wasn't mine, and what they tried to access could ruin me if I hadn't caught it in time. I hadn't used that email in over a year. It was an old Yahoo address, the kind I only kept for legacy logins, things like the electric bill, store rewards programs, and the occasional forwarded coupon from my cousin Janice. But something told me to check it. After the flower shop reset, I figured I might as well see what else they'd tried to reach. And sure enough, the moment I logged in, my stomach turned. 6 password reset emails, all within a 48-hour window. 1 for Florabelle's, 1 for Bank First Savings, 1 for my HealthLink, and 3 for a service they probably didn't realize I still used, Cloud Vault, a digital storage service I subscribed to back when Greg was sick, to upload all of our documents, insurance files, copies of wills, and most importantly, his final letters he wrote to Josh, to me, then to Emily, none of which I had shared. Not yet. Because some words deserve to be heard when the time is right, and not a moment before. I clicked into the reset email. Someone had requested a password change at 2:41 a.m. 2 nights ago. The IP address was logged. I traced it. Palo Alto, California, where Emily's parents lived, where they had gone after the honeymoon. So now we had escalation. Not just identity theft, not just emotional manipulation. They were actively trying to open the digital vault, my final line of defense, where my husband's last thoughts lived, where the truth was kept. And maybe they thought it was filled with financials. Maybe they thought they could delete or manipulate something. But the real value was the words, and the words inside those files would destroy them. I didn't reset the password. I changed the email address altogether, migrated every document to a new encrypted account, updated the cloud storage plan to private legacy mode, a setting that only unlocks with biometric confirmation or legal verification. Then I added something new, a document titled, "If Anything Happens to Me, Read This First." Inside I wrote, "If you are reading this, and I am not here to explain it myself, then someone made sure of that. Please contact Elaine Trevors, my attorney, and provide this file along with the notebook you'll find hidden in the wall safe behind the spice rack." I uploaded every receipt, every date, the flower charge, the medical file access, the fake apology bouquet, Vivian's phone call transcript. Yes, I had started recording. Even the photo from their honeymoon mirror with the binder. All of it. Because I didn't just want revenge. I wanted an insurance policy. I returned to my inbox, clicked on the spam folder. There were 2 more clues waiting for me. A bounce-back email. Failed attempt to access. Is my insurance portal. A password reset for a small local credit union account I hadn't touched in 5 years. Both within minutes of each other. They were digging, not just for sentiment, not just for closure. They were mining for numbers, for assets. And Emily? She wasn't the tech-savvy one. Josh was, which meant my own son had gone into my accounts, my files, my passwords, and he knew what to look for. I picked up my notebook. Section. Breaches. Septu 22. Attempted login to Cloud Vault at 2:41 a.m. IP traced to Vivian Rothstein's residence. Attempts made on my HealthLink, Bank First, Florabelle's, Insurance Portal, and Cloud Union. Confirmed involvement of Josh via known IP match from 2021 device sync. I drew a red underline beneath it. Then I added, intent to locate hidden financials, motive confirmed, conspiracy likely. I remembered something then. Back in May, before all of this started, Josh had casually asked about the green folder in the upstairs closet. He said he was organizing old tax records for me. I'd handed it over, thinking nothing of it. That folder held account overviews, small CDs with backups, printed login hints. Nothing devastating on its own, but enough for someone to begin putting a puzzle together. I never got that folder back. I assumed he'd filed it, shredded it, but now I knew better. He kept it, maybe copied it, maybe handed it to Emily and said, here's what you need. That night, I opened a new account. Different bank, different address, no paper trail. I transferred $15,000 out of my legacy accounts, the ones Greg had always used. I left just enough to keep them alive, just enough to look untouched, and I set up alerts. Any access attempt, any inquiry, and I'd get pinged, because they were coming. Maybe not today, maybe not next week, but eventually, they'd decide to test the waters again. And when they did, I'd be waiting. With traps, with timestamps, with the very files they thought they could erase. Because if there's one thing they forgot about me, it's this. I don't forget. I don't forgive either. Not until justice is done. And now, they were trying to rewrite a legacy they didn't earn. But legacies? They don't come in flowers or bank passwords or whispered lies at 2:41 a.m. They come in truth. And I was about to drop it all, right into their perfect little world. Emily hosted a brunch for close family only. I wasn't invited, but my friend was. And what she overheard? It was the moment I realized they weren't just betraying me, they were rehearsing my replacement. I wasn't invited. Of course not. It was called a family-only fall brunch, sent via a pastel-toned Evite with golden leaves and cinnamon bun clip art. Josh knew I wouldn't see it. They used my old email, the one they tried to hack. But someone else was invited, and thankfully, she still had loyalty where it mattered. Her name is Monica Baird. She's my old neighbor, the one with the herb garden, and the opinion nobody asks for, but everyone secretly values. She's been friends with me since before Josh could spell apology, and she was at every birthday, every funeral, every casserole-worthy life event we had for 20 years. She called me the day after the brunch. "You didn't miss much," she said flatly, "but I think you should hear what I heard." "I wasn't invited," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. I figured. But Marianne, they weren't just having waffles and lying about how happy they are. They were practicing how to talk about you. In past tense, she told me everything. How Vivian, Emily's mother, showed up with a tray of baked French toast and a thick folder labeled Legacy Discussion. How Emily passed it around with a polished little speech about getting ahead of things and respecting elders' wishes. How Josh sat there nodding, saying things like, "Mom's memory isn't what it used to be. She's been forgetting little things, like passwords. We just want to make sure things don't get messy later." Later. I wasn't even dead, and they were already smoothing out the narrative, softening the language, talking about me like I was a fragile inconvenience instead of the woman who raised him. Then Monica said something that made my skin crawl. Emily said, "We don't want a dramatic situation like what happened with Greg." Greg, my husband, the man whose heart stopped in our living room. They weren't there when it happened. They didn't sit with me for the 3 hours it took for the coroner to arrive. They didn't help me cancel the appointments, return the hospice bed, call the insurance adjuster. But they're using him now to justify erasing me. The folder, Monica said, included sample letters, drafted obituaries, estate contact sheets, pre-written email templates for announcement messages. They'd literally rehearsed my exit, like a wedding, like a play. Emily even joked, according to Monica, "I've already got the perfect photo for the slideshow. It's from when she still looked, presentable. Not loved, not alive, just convenient for framing." I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I went to the closet, pulled down the small fireproof safe Greg and I used to keep passports in. Inside was a small envelope. Greg had labeled it himself in thick blue pen, "For M, when you feel replaced." I had never opened it. Not in 5 years, but now I did. Inside was a single piece of paper, folded once. His handwriting, neat, slanted, purposeful. "If they ever make you feel like the room is already too full for you to exist in, remember this. You built the damn house. Don't let them redecorate you out of it." I sat in the dark for 2 hours after that, not because I was weak, but because I was finally certain. They weren't just trying to inherit, they were trying to rewrite who I was, what I meant, what I left behind. And now? I wasn't going to stop them from doing it. I was going to let them try. Because the deeper they dig, the more lies they tell, the tighter the noose becomes. Not for me, but for them. And when the time comes, I'll simply hand them the rope. Later that night, I made another entry in my notebook. Section Narrative Control. Brunch held Sept 24 at Vivian's house. Legacy discussion folder shared. Statements made implying memory decline and incompetence. Monica Baird, eyewitness, willing to testify if needed. I wrote down Emily's presentable comment, word for word. Then I made a list. Obituary drafts. Collect, compare when they go live. Slideshow, photo. Intercept, replace. Contact list. Monitor for family messaging patterns. Legal prep. Start recording medical interactions. Timestamps. Doctor receipts. Because now, they weren't preparing for my death. They were trying to narrate it, and I was going to write my own ending. But here's what they don't understand. When you start planning someone's exit before they're gone, when you create PowerPoints and platitudes for a woman who's still breathing, you don't just lose the moral high ground. You lose the element of surprise. And trust me, I'm about to surprise the hell out of them. Josh stopped by unexpectedly, alone, and asked if I had any final decisions to share. But what he didn't realize, the entire conversation was being recorded, and the trap was finally set. It was a Tuesday afternoon, the kind where the sun feels heavy, pressing through the curtains, but offering no warmth. I was in the kitchen, peeling apples for a pie I'd promised Monica to bring over tomorrow. The scent of cinnamon and brown sugar was beginning to fill the airway, and the doorbell rang. My heart skipped. I wasn't expecting anyone, especially not Josh. I hesitated before opening. There he was, leaning casually against the doorframe, the faint scent of his cologne mixing awkwardly with the stale air. He looked too calm, too practiced. "Hey, Mom," he said, voice soft, but carrying an edge. "Got a minute?" I didn't answer immediately. I let him stand there, waiting. Then I nodded and stepped aside. He came in without asking, as if this was his home. Josh always had that entitlement, the kind you don't outgrow. We sat at the kitchen table, the one I'd scrubbed spotless just that morning, the one with the red notebook tucked away on the far corner. He smiled like he thought he owned the room. "Look, Mom, I wanted to talk about some final decisions," he said, rubbing his hands together. Final decisions, as if I was the one slipping away. I poured 2 cups of tea, bitter and dark, and handed one to him without looking up. "Go on," I said. He hesitated for a moment, then started. "We think it's best to move forward with the plans. The insurance, the estate, everything. We just want to make sure everything's smooth, no surprises." I held his gaze. "Surprises like what, Josh?" He blinked, clearly thrown off. "You know, the stuff Mom forgets, the papers she loses." I took a slow sip, tasting the bitterness. "Do you think I'm forgetful?" He avoided my eyes. "It's not personal, just practical." I nodded. "Practical," I repeated. "Like sending flowers to yourself, charged to your mother's account?" He flinched. What he didn't know, what he never suspected, was that I'd set the entire conversation to record. Hidden in the kitchen radio was a small digital recorder I'd installed 2 weeks ago. Every word, every hesitation, every slip of truth was being captured. Because I needed proof, not just for myself, but for anyone who thought they could rewrite my story behind my back. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Look, Mo, I'm just trying to help. We want what's best." I laughed softly, a sound edged with years of bitterness. "Help or control? You don't understand," he said, voice rising. "Emily's worried about the future. She's trying to protect the family." "Protect?" I echoed. "By pretending I'm already gone?" The room felt colder. "I'm serious, Mom," he said. "You don't have much time. Things could get worse." I stared at him. "How do you know?" He swallowed. "We've talked to the doctors. They said, your memory isn't what it used to be." That was the moment I decided. This wasn't just a visit. It was an ultimatum, a veiled threat, a betrayal so deep it cut through everything I thought I knew about my son. I sipped my tea again and said quietly, "Then you should listen carefully, Josh, because I'm not done fighting. And you—" I leaned forward, voice icy. "You just gave me everything I need." I pressed the stop button on the recorder when he left. A quiet click. The tape held everything. Words that could expose their plot. Words that proved their manipulation. That night, I wrote in my notebook, section, Confrontations, Evidence, Septi 29, Josh's unannounced visit, recorded admission of knowledge about my health, clear attempt to accelerate estate control, use of guilt and fear as manipulation tools, prepare legal counsel with audio evidence, and then I wrote the last note for the night. They think they have the upper hand, but I hold the truth. I placed the recorder inside my red notebook, tucked it safely away in the wall safe, and for the first time in weeks, I slept with a small, bitter smile, because now the trap was set, and the final act was about to begin. With evidence in hand and allies ready, I confronted Emily and Vivian at their own dinner party. What I revealed shattered the perfect family facade and finally showed the cost of their lies. I never thought I'd set foot in their house again. Emily and Vivian's pristine, chandelier-lit dining room where everything gleams except the truth. But that evening, September 30th, I walked in not as the excluded mother-in-law, but as the bearer of every secret they tried to bury. I was dressed in my favorite navy blouse, the one Greg loved, the one that made me feel like myself again. I carried my red notebook under my arm like a shield. Emily greeted me with that icy smile, the one that said, "You don't belong here." Vivian stood stiffly beside her, eyes darting nervously. "You came," Emily said, voice sweet but brittle. I returned the smile, calm, deliberate. I did. The table was set for 8, gleaming silverware, crystal glasses, and candles flickering in perfect symmetry. Guests chatted softly, friends from their social circle, people I barely knew, and people who had been invited to witness the family unity. I cleared my throat, drawing every eye. "I'd like to say something before dinner," I said, voice steady, carrying the weight of years and silence. A hush fell. Emily's smile faltered. I opened the red notebook and placed it on the table, tapping the cover. For months I've been told I'm forgetful, that I'm a burden, that my time to step aside is near. I looked around, letting the silence stretch. But what you don't know is that behind your perfect little invitations, your rehearsed speeches, and your fake condolences lies a web of deception. I pulled out the folded letter from Greg, his words that cut through the charade. "My husband left me this, to remind me I built the house, not just lived in it." Some guests gasped quietly. And when my own son tried to hack into my private accounts, when Emily sent me a blank wedding invitation, when they rehearsed my obituary before I was even invited to brunch, I paused, holding their gazes. I recorded conversations. I documented every lie, every attempt to erase me. I flipped open the notebook. Here's the recording of Josh admitting to trying to control everything, to accelerate my decline on paper, if not in reality. I hit play on my phone's speaker. Josh's voice filled the room. "We think it's best to move forward with the plans. No surprises." Murmurs rose. Vivian's face paled. Emily's jaw tightened. I didn't stop there. I recounted the flower shop charge, the fake apologies, the stolen folder, the attempted hacks. "You wanted to rewrite my story, but I'm the one who holds the pen." The room was tense, faces unreadable, the guests looking between us like spectators to a slow-motion collapse. Emily's voice cracked as she said, "Mom, please, this isn't how family should behave." I shook my head. "Family shouldn't behave like this, but some of us choose truth over appearances." Before anyone could respond, Monica, my steadfast ally, stood up from the corner. I heard it all at the brunch. The rehearsed legacy talk, the plan to push her aside. Heads turned. Monica's presence gave weight to my words, a witness to their betrayal. Emily's mask finally broke. "You think you're the victim? You've pushed us away for years. We're just trying to protect what's left." I leaned forward, voice cold but steady. "Protect what? Control? Your inheritance? Or the lie that you're the good kids in this story?" The air was thick with silence. Then Vivian whispered, "We never meant for it to come to this." I looked at them, tired, angry, but also broken. "No," I said, "but it did. Because you chose secrecy over respect, lies over love." I closed my notebook. Tonight, I reclaim my place, not as a fading memory, but as the woman who built this family. Through every hardship, every sacrifice, every truth, I stood. And if you think this is the end, you're wrong, because it's never the end, not when there's still a story to tell.